Hello, guys. Hey, everyone. So, today I have a really interesting guest, Guy Millar, who actually participates in a lot of sport tech projects and he knows the industry really well. So, Guy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Guy Millar. Like I said, I was born and bred in South Africa. I've lived through South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and now I'm based out of France. My background is in sports, always been sports, and my passion has always been sports and technology. I started with performance and sports science and moved into computer science. So that was a passion I've always had. I think in terms of the businesses we've tried to build, my first one based out of Sydney is around business intelligence and always been data, and it's been a passion of mine. So that data we focused on initially was anything around business, so operations, financial data, anything like that. The next business is based out of Canada. That's Playwise and Open Sport. We were trying to build an infrastructure around sport and sports data. We know that sports data is all siloed at the moment, particularly performance data. So we're trying to build an infrastructure that allows us to basically aggregate those data sources and make it easier for people to integrate into those applications. And so on the front end of that, we've built an AI sort of first business where we're trying to build a bunch of different models to work on your data sets. And with Playwise being the front end sort of proof of concept where we bring everything together using this infrastructure as the underlying technology. And then the third business is AIA Sports based out of France that we've expanded sort of internationally now, but initially was a business focused only on rugby data. So we code and tag most of the major competitions across the world. So of 1,600, 1,800 games a year with a bunch of coders based around the world. And then we produce that data and visualize it. And that's where we started. Now we've sort of expanded into a space where we're doing multi-sport and we're providing the facilities that we've typically done internally. We provide a software to allow people to tag their own matches, create their own playlists, do their own analysis on their sport, and doesn't necessarily have to be rugby. We've now sort of ventured into the multi-sport world.
Okay, interesting. So, the question a little bit regarding your personal journey. So, how does your, professional background as an athlete helps you understand and balance between the technology and what is really needed for the coaches and teams?
Well, I think it's something I didn't mention just there, but I played until I retired from professional sport as a rugby player in the middle of last year. So in terms of my passion, and to answer your question, my passion has always been that intersection of sports and technology, which is why I've got so deep into it. But being able to live it every day and seeing the problems or not problems, but seeing how we can sort of make our lives easier, make the lives easier of not only the athletes, but the coaches, the whole ecosystem of the sports world, make it easier with technology. So being able to live that life was a good step and a good way to really immerse myself in it and see what we can do. But what's interesting is also I've been able, because I did it across 3 different countries, there's 3 different, completely different ways of doing the same tasks. The way people train, the way people interact or operate in the professional sports environment. So that's been very interesting to see how you also handle that, how people want to work with it, how far advanced they are in the technology and the uptake, and how forward thinking they are.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned, right, you've seen, coaches from different parts of the world, and do you see any differences depending on the part of the world, how people are working with technology and their demands regarding this?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the southern hemisphere, it's a lot. It's a lot more digital. It was a lot more of a focus digitally and on data. And so anything you would produce, we did a lot of clipping, a lot of video, a lot of self-analysis, particularly as players. Whereas playing as France was slightly different. So it was a lot more coach-driven, which is changing now. It's a lot more coach-driven. So the way you looked at data was slightly different. The things you sort of focused on as well in terms of the patterns of play or the patterns of analyzing your opponent, that was also slightly different between the sort of 2 hemispheres.
Okay, and right now, like sport clubs, they need, like, I don't know if they need more data, but I know they want to have faster data and more quality data. So what are the challenges in sports data work you see right now in technology work to provide the best services?
Well, I think there's definitely 2. If you're talking about multi-sport. If we take sports that are team sports, but people are typically individuals, so sports like basketball, football, those into sport, type of sports where if we're talking about trying to, as close to live as possible, tag the athletes, tag the actions, and generate this data, it's a lot easier to do it with those sports where you can isolate a single player and follow a player. You've got the full pitch or court in screen, you can see the lines and you can literally track the objects around the field. If I now then bring that to rugby, we're definitely one of the more difficult. We haven't provided the seamless solution to be able to automate the tagging process as yet, because you have players who you've got 16 players who come together for a scrum, and then that scrum is very similar to a ruck, and then you've got people who disappear, you've got muddy days, you've got people who are on the bottom of the rucks, and you lose the object tracking that you can do in other sports. So, that's been definitely one of the challenges in terms of tagging rugby games and creating these actions and generating this data. And obviously the second one, which is really important, is that it's not as much of an issue as more of something to be conscious about, is depending on the type of data you're working with, there's obviously all these privacy laws that you really have to consider. So now that AI is coming into the world, you have to be considerate about where that data is going. Is there any data leaking? How are you handling all the laws and security and cyber around that? That's not a constraint, but a consideration when working with these systems.
Okay, so the two main things, right, for a niche sport like rugby, let's say, it's really hard to detect the events because it's all players in one place, and it's like you said. My question to you is that are you talking regarding AI? Like, is it hard for AI to detect, or is it also hard even for a real human eye to be able to break down?
Well, I think it depends how you partner. So the first thing you need is a reliable stream of that match, obviously. So it depends on your partners. If you can get a solid view, I mean, if you take a single rugby TV view, you've got angles that are large. You see the entire screen. You've got your close-in angle. You've got your end-on angle. You could have a drone. You could have whatever's going on there. But if you have an angle that constantly moves, it's very hard for computer vision to do it. Similarly and inversely, it's easier for humans to do it, and a lot more manual work. It's easier, but there's still instances where if it's a really muddy day, for example, and you're not on some really nice field, or it's really raining, or you got one angle that's extremely zoomed out, it does get difficult for the coders to still tag. A lot less than the AI. The AI is finding that almost impossible for the moment. But yeah, it's a challenge for both at the moment.
Okay, yeah, I got you. And that's why I think the coders should understand the intentions of the players, right? And what's happening in the game. Not only see, but trying to pretend and understand what's going to happen.
Exactly. And teaching the players about teaching the coders about profiles of their players. So you're saying their intentions. I mean, you're understanding how they play, or if you sort of do lose context of what's going on, and there's a big heavy carry that's in the middle of the field typically, and you're not quite sure, you could have a pretty good guess that it's going to be that, because obviously the quality of the data, never mind how live it is, the quality of the data also is huge in today's world. If you get one thing wrong, depends where you're working, but if you're working post-match, okay, you can correct that. But if you're working live and you're working with betting, or you're working with anything, you get something wrong, people lose money, and trouble starts.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of the quality, I'd like to bring up this topic, quality of the data. You mentioned that is really, really important, but I assume there are some different industries. Let's say in betting, it's like, you need to be 100% correct. And then how important do you see the quality of the sports data while serving coaches? And are there any, data points that are really need to be perfect and some could be missed a little bit? Yeah. So,
Well, I think one of the fundamental changes between, say, live data because you're working with betting, and say post-match analysis for the coaches. Post-match analysis, if you get it wrong because you deliver slightly later, they might be analyzing the bus after the game 3-5 hours later, or the next day even, you don't have the right to get the right, or you don't have the window, the margin to get that wrong, because that should be checked. It should have been analyzed. And if you get, that's where you typically get into the individual analysis. How is a player tracking? How is a player moving? How do they perform? So you don't have that margin. When you're talking about live data, obviously you cannot get it wrong, but the number of actions which really people are betting on is a lot less. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
can't get certain actions like who actually scored the try wrong because obviously then
Yeah.
you bet on that sort of thing. Whether or not a person made 4 meters or 5 meters on that carry, okay, maybe that's sort of a bit of grey
Mhm.
area, but less so. I mean, when the props are kicking conversions, you start to sort of look at your thing going, something's probably wrong here. But I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
Okay, yeah. And in AIA Sports, do you guys focus only on serving coaches right now, or are you looking for other avenues to make money from?
No, we work across media, we work across teams. Yeah, we work across it all. We're trying to we produce live data, and
Really?
to my previous point is what we're trying to work on now is there's one thing we don't do is we'll never ever give up the quality of the data for speed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's how we can get better and how we can get more efficient at tagging and delivering these actions faster. So at the moment we've got X amount of points, data points that we deliver live. How could we do that faster? How can we expand these number of points? And that's sort of the work we've got to do now without giving up any of the quality that we pride ourselves on.
Interesting. So you deliver data live.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about it, how it works?
Yeah, so we partner with we have partners. We get our streams, and with our streams, we are able to have our own interfaces. We have interfaces that are built internally, that are not exposed anywhere, that are purpose built for our live coding and live analysis. We have our coders, like I mentioned. We've got coders all across the world that are trained, and we make sure that they're up to date with the training. They're all scored to make sure that we keep our quality up there. But have live streams to live interfaces, and then we work obviously on the back end. We get that in a database, and we start to produce our data from that.
Okay, and I can assume live has a high dynamic. And do you have one person working on one team, or is it like some kind of a table, we call it, of people who are working on one game?
Depending on the quality, on the depth of stats. At the moment, we have two people.
Mm-hmm.
We have two people this year. We're extending to a few more, but that forms part of what we're trying to do internally. So that's the big thing. How do we rework this? How do we make it better? How do we make it more efficient, more and faster? But yeah, our thing has always been all of our coders that we use are all ex players or ex athletes.
Mm-hmm.
All of our internal supervisors are all ex analysts for big teams and professional teams, and so we're producing data that by professionals, people who have done it, who know it, who understand it, and that's been something that's been really important to us.
Okay, yeah, we've like dived deep into data collection, but let's zoom out a little bit and tell us about your current role in the company. What you're responsible for?
So my role here at I'm the CTO, so I'm responsible for everything around the technology. So we've looked at our systems as a whole, and we got to a point where we've now sort of stabilized and regrouped, redeveloped our applications to make sure stability is being the core of what we're trying to do. And then part of my role is looking at, okay, we have this functionality, and then working closely with the CEO or the commercial team. Okay, what do we want to sell? What are we trying to grow to? What are we trying to achieve? And then from a technical point of view, how do we achieve that? So looking at the systems, and one thing obviously is maintaining speed. How fast can we produce that data and those data points reliably for our clients? It's all about reliability of our services, whether it be live, whether it be post match, and the quality of our data.
Can we say so? So basically, you're the guy who are responsible for, for after the data is being collected, to create applications on top of it, and to make it, commercial sellable data.
Yeah, I'm not physically writing. We have a team of web developers with us. We've got a team of data scientists with us. We've got a team of supervisors with us in the office. We come up with the strategies and the implementation plan, and it's them that it's our team here that implements it.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what we do is change to a focus on the client. It's all good for me to want a particular statistic, but it really means nothing because it's all about our clients. What do our clients want to see? If I think it's cool, well, it's actually cool. I think it's nice, but a lot of those needs. So when our clients say to us, we want this sort of information in our live XML stats, or we want this sort of information post match, That's where you start to go, okay, how do we integrate that into our process, in our current process? How do we expand our current process, and how do we actually get that to the clients?
Okay, yeah, and it's actually, I think, a big challenge, especially being, an ex-player, when you might be thinking, hey, this is a cool metric, or this is a cool thing, but, it's your opinion, right?
Exactly, and especially because I played at the front. I was a prop, so I obviously didn't. I cared. I cared less about the kicking metrics of the 12 than probably a kicking coach does. So it's trying to put that aside, and just really listening to what people are after, what the people are working with the data are after, what our clients want to see, and that's been a focus over the last sort of 18 months.
Okay, yeah, pretty interesting. So let me zoom out a little bit more. So you've been working with, amateur team and professional teams. What are the differences the key differences you see in these two different customer segments?
Between professional and amateur teams?
Yes, in terms of technology.
Two things leading from the same thing, but one particularly in France is budgets. So because the budgets are significantly different, what you have with a bigger budget is a bigger team, which means you've got more people really analyzing the data, really having a budget to pay for the data, really diving into it. And then with a smaller budget, you always get less people, so less times. The smaller budget teams still have the same needs. They want to look at data, but they might not have enough time to go into as much depth as the bigger teams. The bigger teams have people that want to go to the nth degree of a particular player at a particular time in a particular action, versus the people or the smaller teams, the more amateur teams don't have that. And the other thing is obviously the ability to get access to videos and those sort of things for delivery of that data as fast as possible. I'm talking post match, but yeah.
So in the lower tier leagues, people still have demand for data, but they are not able to analyze it really deeply.
Exactly. They still got the same demands, which is why we started producing our second software. We saw coaches in lower divisions, more amateur divisions, or maybe not with the huge budgets of these top 14 clubs. They still have their coaches. They might have coaches that are doing it for the love of the sport, might not be getting paid, but they want to put in 1 or 2 hours a week, maybe cut up some clips from their team, produce their little playlists, because ultimately it's these players that, especially if they're younger, might move their way up and end up in third, second, first division going forward. So why wait till they're there to have this professional environment? So that need is still there. They just have less time, definitely. But if we're trying to produce the software so that they put it in their hands, they can cut up their clips, their training, create their playlists, share it with the athletes, and the athletes can start getting better and start analyzing their own games like they would in any other professional setup.
Hey, let's talk about a little bit of the future. Let's pretend that we know something that is going to happen. And for you, as a person who has, better overview on the industry of sport tech, let's say, than I am for sure, if we would look into, 5 to 10 years, how do you see, first of all, what new technology do you see being entered in the market? The first question. And the second one, what is regarding sports data? How do you see sports data going to be changed in 10 years?
I think 5 to 10 years in this day and age is huge. We've seen how far technology's come in the last 2-3 years. Every day with AI, something's changing. So it's hard to guess, but we could definitely, what sort of new technology? I definitely think you'll start to see a lot more around AR, VR, mixed reality and virtual reality. So we can start having players, whether or not, I don't think it's going to be something where we all you wearing these big goggles, but I could imagine where you start to get something where people are training. So one, to handle load monitoring of athletes, because the demands are huge, being able to put themselves using data in the scenarios without actually being on the field. They could have their sort of virtual reality stuff, whether or not it's glasses, whether or not it is the big goggles, I don't really know. And put themselves in the high pressure situation. So it's all been previously about visualizing that. Now really you're in that environment, you're seeing what's happening, you're seeing what's happening live. So that's one thing I can definitely see happening. And then as you start to, I think that can extend to fan engagement. But to get there, I do think that you're going to get this Web3 layer that's going to come in. So when you start to integrate blockchain and contracts and smart contracts, I do think it's going to get really interesting in terms of who owns the data, what happens with the data, and actually if they start selling the data to fans for fan engagement. Sorry, I just pressed a lot on. If they start selling the data for fan engagement, then players get a cut of that because it's going to become it's already happening in football. Who owns the data? So that's a separate discussion. But when you start getting to adding in smart contracts, then you get to fan engagements where you could very easily imagine that fans are really part of the experience. They can see what the players are seeing. They can see how the players train. They could be standing next to the players at training, not obviously being there, but really start to be part of the experience.
This is really interesting. Can you please tell me a little bit more? Explain. Yeah, so I'm not really into Web3 space and smart contracts, but just explain, how do you see it actually working?
Well, I think if you look at traditionally, because the fundamental difference is if I owned any piece of data today and someone else used it, you sold my data, whatever it was, my match data or my performance data, because you got your hands on it. Whether or not I gave it to you, whatever, you have it, and you sold that, I get no piece of that.
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, if everything is written in the Web3 world, because you can trigger things and everything has the ability to be traced, the minute it's consumed, we can automatically trigger these smart contracts to give you your piece, get you paid, and get the athlete paid, and that's part of the smart contract. So the smart contract's all about that typical contracting process and negotiation, but it allows you to trigger things with full transparency, which you can't do with traditional databases. I change something in my database, you've got no idea what's going on. Smart contract's not quite the same, and blockchain's not quite the same. So I do think it's going to get there, and it's a conversation you have now, which sounds so far-fetched, but I imagine sort of 3 years ago when you talked about how prevalent or the things like GPT or ChatGPT or those sort of AI tools would be today, you would never imagine that so integrated into our world. Yeah. So it's quite hard to answer your question, say 5 or 10 years. Who knows, we could be playing on the moon. But just in terms of technology, I can definitely see it going that way, and particularly getting and expanding out to fan engagement as well.
Yeah, this is a really interesting idea. So you see the players could be getting a cut from every point of data that is being used by the fan, and then the player and the team will get a percentage of it.
Exactly, and then everyone wins. Everyone's happy, and it's not a manual process because you can trigger it automatically. It becomes something you don't have to think about. Like this day and age, there's no manual recons. Everything is just fully automated and transparent.
Interesting. Yeah, everyone's gonna win except a couple of these big companies.
No, exactly. Yeah.
All right, guys. So let me ask you a couple of bits questions at the end. So first of all, what is your favorite sport?
My favorite sport would have to be rugby union.
Okay, then who is your favorite player? Athlete, I would say.
That's a great question. My favorite player traditionally is probably someone you haven't heard of, but it was John Smith, who was the captain of the Springboks for quite a while. He was a hooker. Mm-hmm. I always found that he was a really good player, obviously, but he had a really good link between rugby and post-rugby life, which I've always found really important, because there's obviously in this day and age, a lot of athletes are finding themselves without anything or not really thinking about the future, and our careers can be ended in a second. So yeah, it's someone I've always thought did it really well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, is there any sport apart from rugby that you like?
Yeah, I've grown up playing sports my whole life, so I've played rugby, hockey, cricket were my sort of traditional sports, and also played water polo growing up, and rowing was one as well. But that's basically had to choose between sports where you need to be a bit lighter and sports where I need to be heavier. So very quickly, those ones where I run a lot, they disappeared.
Okay. The next thing, what is the favorite part of your job?
The intersect. I love the automation of and solving of the problems that I found to be problems during my career, and being able to automate and aggregate all of that. I used to like having a holistic view. So if it was from your diet or to your performance, to your gym, to your sleep, whatever, it used to be so segmented and not really well tracked. I like to bring that all together, and with my job it allows me to try and start to create one single athlete profile no matter what data we're collecting, and see how you can sort of automate those processes which used to be typically manual or done in Excel.
Okay, we might bring you in half a year to talk about Playwise, but it's actually a really interesting idea to have everything in one place.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
the next one. What is the favorite part we just talked about? The worst part of your job.
Worst part of my job. I think the most frustrating part of technology would be when it doesn't do exactly what you want it to do. When you're starting to code and you can't work out why, and you've been going for a number of hours and you go round and round in circles, and eventually you get help from someone and you realize you just put a dot instead of a comma in one place. It's definitely one of the most frustrating things that happens.
Okay, yeah, those small tricky moments in coding.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT, isn't it helping you to code right now to double check the code with all small things right now?
AI has increased the speed at which we can develop things. It's phenomenal, actually. It doesn't matter, not necessarily ChatGPT, but any of the AI programs and AI co-pilots, they've significantly increased it, but it also still doesn't have. You've still got to be really careful. So we have it internally and we do use it, but we don't rely on it fully because it doesn't have the full context and it can go off on tangents. It doesn't know exactly what you want to do. So you still rely on things that typically back in the day junior developers could have done, tasks that are building out, slowly building out things and taking a skeleton and building that out. The AI co-pilots now can do in 30 seconds. But anything post that, especially when you're working in data, you can't just let it go free fall. So things on the front end, yes, that goes much faster. But a lot of our metrics and those sort of things, we still use it to get a skeleton into a base when you guide it that way. But then you still need to take a lot of care when you're using it.
What one advice would you give to, let's say, young people who want to enter sport tech as employees?
It's a great question. It depends what level they want to go to. So, I mean, we were having a conversation at lunch. As I mentioned earlier, my background, undergrad was in sports science, the science of how the body works, and helped give me an understanding of the performance side, the performance data, and then my postgraduate in computer science. So that's how I combined the two. But knowing where the world is today, I said to we were saying at lunch, like I would love to have studied maths. It sounds ridiculous, but maths, because it's the basis of
Math?
everything. Yeah, mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's the basis of everything, all this reasoning and all these models that are, if this is the way you want to go, if you really want to go far, it's the basis of the reasoning behind all these models. So we are doing a lot more work with AI. You don't have to go that far, and that's what I say. It depends what you want to do. In terms of advice, if you want to build your own models and really dive into that, I'd just go maths, because the rest will come and you'll study data, and the way you can use these things to help you learn now is incredible. How fast you can go and how you can have 30-day programs built tailored to you from these LLMs. But just getting into sport tech, I think you've just got to, my advice is, if you have a passion for it, find things that you found or you see that are frustrating, or something that you want to do. If you want to be closer to the fans, or if you want to be closer to the players, or if you want to fix a gap that's in something that you do every day, use these tools and start to. The whole thing these days is a vibe coding. Use these tools, try and plug that gap, try and build something, ask it for advice, see what you can come up with. And a lot of what we work on is to get to proof of concept. So try and build something out that provides that proof of concept, that plugs that hole, that provides it fixes what you're after, and see where that takes you. I mean, there's a lot of trial and error, but for me, that's a good way in. If you got to be passionate about it, because it's going to go. Yeah, it goes up and down every day. But it's all about, for me, that's what keeps me going. I love trying to, like I said, automating the process and aggregating this data, was because I'm trying to fix something that I found was an issue for me in my everyday life.
Okay, yeah, so basically find a problem and solve a problem.
Exactly.
This is the way. Okay, yeah, guys. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you. Is there anything that you would like to share before we end?
Would I like to share? No, I've got nothing. I've got nothing I like to share. I think. Thank you very much for your time. I've enjoyed being here. It's been very interesting chatting.
Yeah, thank you. And we might have you, like I said, in 6 months to talk about the playwise and the developments over there. Because, like I said, pretty interesting concept and idea.
Thank you very much. I'd be very open to it.
Bye.
Bye bye.